My name is Juliana Nicolasian with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Friday, January 21st, 2010, and I'm in McLeod, Oklahoma, interviewing Sandy Ingraham. This interview is being conducted as part of the inductees of the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame Oral History Project. Sandy was inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame in 1996. Thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Well, let's begin by learning a little bit more about you. Could you tell us where you grew up and give us a glimpse into your early life?
I didn't grow up any one place. I'm an Air Force brat. I was born in California. I'm actually a Valley girl in the Northern Valley of California, and moved every year. I went to 8 different high schools. I graduated from high school in North Africa, and I just never really stayed in one place. And every time I moved, I could change myself if I wanted because nobody knew me. So I sort of, if you didn't like what you were or who you were or what you were doing, you just did something different the next time you landed.
So, growing up, what was your favorite place? Your favorite city, country?
I really enjoyed every place I was. So I did my early high school years in Southern California, did a lot of surfing. Moved to upstate New York, did a lot of skiing and ice skating. When I went to North Africa, Tripoli, Libya, did a lot of scuba diving in the Mediterranean, played bridge with Gaddafi at the time. I was in the last wave of civilians to be booted out of the country. And it was just, everything was fascinating. My dad was in air rescue, and so he had a nice job. He could fly around and save people. So he was a pilot.
And did you have a large family?
A brother, 2 years older, so by the time I was in Libya, he had already gone to college, University of Nebraska. Big rivals, because I'm OU, not very orange, very
That's okay.
red, very crimson and cream.
Well, when you're going through your different high school experiences, did you gravitate towards any subjects that you just really liked and took to?
Sports.
Mhm.
I really liked sports. In fact, when I eventually started college, I was a physical education major. Played a lot of tennis. I loved tennis. Had a two-handed backhand before Chrissy Everett was even born. So, and for some reason, every time I moved in high school, we ended up in the soccer season, and so I was in soccer a lot. Played a lot of basketball. I just love sports. So.
Okay. And when you're growing up, did you have any aspirations? Did you say, "Man, when I grow up, I want to be this"?
No, I not specific aspirations. I just knew I could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was like my parents were big into education. I was the I think I would more refer to the way I lived as kind of a genteel poverty as a child, but it seemed pretty flush to me at the time. We were, officers. I was an officer's child in the military. We lived in good homes. Um, my dad made good money. Didn't want for anything. Never doubted I would go to college. Never even thought twice about it. It's just we valued education. That was where the resources were put, and that was where I went. I ended up paying for my own college after a while. We kind of split in my early college years, but the childhood was wonderful.
Well, how did you make your way to Oklahoma?
Kind of ran out of money here. I was in North Africa. I was sort of heading toward California. I stopped here because this is where my mother was born, actually, Pauls Valley. Didn't stay here much, but have a lot of maternal family in this area. Kind of hung around. Just started at the university, Oklahoma City University. Had a small tennis scholarship, and they accepted it. Forgot to tell me there wasn't a tennis team at the time, but we got over that.
And while you're going through school, you started working?
Yes, well, I worked kind of from the outset. I worked at the Beef and Bun, hamburgers and things like that. Just always worked. In fact, I had a key to the dorm because I worked so late I'd have to let myself in. Then that was in the mid 60s, and it's kind of like politically I kind of split from the world, Oklahoma, and my family because of the Vietnam War. I was not real fond of it, and I said so. And my brother was in Vietnam, and my aunt in Oklahoma City would, of course, cut out the articles about what I said and send it to him, and he got all the attention, and I love him to death. We got over this a long time ago. He's just a wonderful brother. So, but as a result, I ended up paying for the rest of my education myself and going through school, and I did some CPA work and some different things, and ended up going back to school at Central State University, or I guess it was Central State College at that time, and now it's University of Central Oklahoma. And I graduated from there twice, and from OU twice.
Just to go back for a second, was there a lot of political unrest, lots of protesting with the war?
Not a whole lot at the time. That was kind of like at the beginning of it. I think that's why it caught so much attention. The fact that my dad was in air rescue in Europe and my brother was in Vietnam was why the press would pay attention to anything I said at the time. Not that I was important in and of myself, but that it became newsworthy. It was at the beginning of the protests, and people who were opposed to the war then, as I think the whole world knows now, we were right, but then we were seen as being wrong and ostracized, and wasn't very pleasant. University didn't like it either.
Just because I get the feeling that Oklahoma, you would definitely stand out in Oklahoma.
Definitely.
If you opposed the war.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. People would definitely take notice.
Yes, definitely. And have probably stayed on the sort of the left side of the political world my entire career. And everything I do is kind of on the left side, kind of progressive. I do work that I want to do. I don't do work that I don't want to do. Being my own boss, I get to choose where I put my time and my efforts. And as a result, I've kind of ended up living parallel to the society in Oklahoma instead of in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, jumping back to college,
okay.
You received your degree in...
I received a degree in English literature. I received a degree in philosophy. And then I got a master's in social work and a Juris Doctorate.
Now, did you go straight through for your first master's degree?
Not really.
So
yeah, through the master's program.
Okay.
Did 2 years in a row. About 7 years in undergraduate school, 2 years. And then a long gap. I was middle 40s before I went to law school.
So your first master's degree is in social work, correct?
Yes.
What steered you in that direction?
The kind of work, I thought I was going to be a counselor. I thought I was going to mess with people's heads, help them deal with stuff. When I actually started into school, and I was like a new duck, because all my undergraduate work was English literature and philosophy and kind of esoteric, and I loved it. In fact, my philosophy degree is probably the one thing that puts me in the best stead for anything I do. But I didn't have a background in social sciences and sociology and social work at all. So when I got to graduate school, I just loved it. Everybody else that I went to school with was kind of sick of it because they'd gotten their bachelor's in that. But it was all new stuff to me, and I just loved it. And I got interested in social policy and community organization and social change, and became a big fan of Saul Alinsky, and did the kind of work, community capacity building, which President Obama did a lot of when he was a practitioner. In fact, that was pretty interesting listening to him try to explain what he did, because nobody ever understood what I did, you know. So so I switched to policy, and when I got out of school, I went into legislative advocacy, lobbying.
So tell me about some of your first experiences down at the Capitol as a lobbyist.
Oh, they were pretty interesting. I've arrived at the Capitol as a student practicum under the School of Social Work. It was the second year, it was a block practicum, and I had a difficult time finding an agency that would house this practicum because nobody had ever done it before. I ended up at Neighborhood Services Organization in Oklahoma City. Guy that ran the agency at the time is now a city council person in Oklahoma City, Sam Bowman. Just a wonderful fellow. I learned a lot from him. My immediate supervisor was Ben Brown, that eventually became a state senator also. But they just let me go up to the Capitol and see if there was a way to impact policy that affected clients and providers of social work, social services. And I did that. I organized some, they had a health issue, for example, and I organized a bunch of people that had been turned away from Oklahoma City hospitals to go and talk to the legislators, and I would get the media involved so that people would show up. One thing and another. I ran quickly into sort of the conservative right-wing faction at the time, mostly public, not legislators. The legislature was actually fairly progressive at that time, especially compared to now. And I was running a bill. I was trying to get a bill passed that allowed young people to self-consent for mental health care. The idea was that if a child was thinking about suicide, for example, and their parents were the problem, they had trouble getting help because the parents had to consent. And so I wanted an exception. Of course, the way the bill was drafted, you could drive a truck through it, and it also threatened to give kids the right to self-consent, to birth control, to abortion, to a bunch of things that people didn't like. And so one of the conservative senators, called the school and told him I was a hippie and wore jeans to the Capitol, which wasn't true. From that day on, I never wore anything except hose and heels when I went in that building, and that was 45 years ago, probably. So it's been a long time to change your dress. But you just don't let them pick on the easy stuff, Don't let them discount the work you're doing or your ideas for something stupid, that doesn't matter, that isn't going to change anything. So we did that kind of stuff, and I eventually got lots of contracts with different organizations where I kind of kept track of legislation. I didn't do that much lobbying for these different groups, but I would track the legislation and report to their boards and their members about what was going on and advise them if they wanted to do anything about it. And so I kind of put that together as a business and did it for 20, 25 years. And probably made more money than most social workers, but I never had to worry about it. There were people that couldn't pay me, and I would just work for them, and other people that overpaid me, and I would work for them, and it all came out in the wash.
What were some of the key issues that were just really close to your heart that you championed?
One of my favorites was the Good Faith Donor Bill, which allows people to donate food that might be mislabeled or have the labels on upside down or something. Back in the old days, food companies that had a product that was perfectly good wouldn't donate it to a food closet or a church that served poor people because the chain of liability carried it. So if the recipient got sick because of drinking the milk or whatever they got, then they could sue the original donor. So I helped write and pass a bill that cut off that chain of liability. If somebody donated it and it was in good condition and it was hurt later, then the chain of liability got cut off. And we used that bill to generate extra donations from very generous corporations that just gave lots of food. And it helped the food bank, and it helped the small church closets, food closets. That was fun. I also did a bill on allowing nonprofit organizations to be able to rent HUD foreclosed homes for $1 a year, provided they house homeless people in them. Ran into a lot of opposition with that one. There's a Jim Lang, back in his days of the political cartoons. It's hanging out there in the office. You can see it if you like. But it's a political cartoon he did where there's a hobo leaning over a fence talking to a guy in a hot tub, and he says, "Hi, I'm your new neighbor." There is this unnecessary fear that homeless people were going to move into rich neighborhoods and ruin the character. That wasn't what it was about. But so those were the kinds of things I worked on, and I loved it. It was a great way to change policy. I wouldn't have run for office on a bet. Still not interested in that, because from the position I was in, I could do more than any single legislator. So I wouldn't have done that even if I thought I could. I wouldn't want to.
Were they always, the legislators, open to meet with you, especially in those early years?
Yeah, and they still are. Oklahoma politicians are very populist kind of oriented, where they understand that their power comes from people, and they are responsive to people, and you can get an audience with just about anybody. Very few of them have that kind of elitist attitude that you might expect them to have. It's not very common in Oklahoma.
Any favorite legislators that you liked working with through the years?
Oh,
too many to name?
Too many to name, but I will tell you that David Riggs is probably one of my most favorite, and he's been out of office for a long time now. He's an attorney in Tulsa. The Riggs law firm. He's pretty big law firm. He's got an Oklahoma City office and a Tulsa office. But he had just so much integrity and that was pretty rare down there. People would do one thing and they would say another thing, but David Riggs never did, and didn't agree with him on everything, but you could always bank on what he said, and that was a nice commodity. I worked with people like Bernice Kane, who is got term limited, and he's out of the legislature now, but he was always in charge of the Human Services Committee, and did the issues that I cared most about, and so we worked together on several things, and he was a good man. Lots of people. I mean, I would be remiss if I started trying to name them all.
I understand.
Including current ones, So.
Ever have any run-ins with the governor?
Which one? There was lots of governors.
There are lots of governors during that time span.
They
ever turn around and see you coming and they go the other way?
Well, I've had people do that, but it wasn't a governor. But it was someone pretty close to a governor and pretty recent. And we won't even go into that one.
Okay.
But I will tell you, he walked into a closet to avoid me, and I just wanted to stand outside the closet so that when he came out, he'd be embarrassed. But I just went on. But at any rate, yes, one of the groups that I worked with was the Oklahoma Conference of Churches, and we did. Am I?
Oh, you're fine.
We did work on poverty and social policy that affected poor people in Oklahoma. One time we got funded by the Hands Across America project to look at what budget cuts were doing for poor people. So I would write studies on poverty in Oklahoma, and we did several of them under the Conference of Churches, and then the Conference of Churches would have ceremonies where they'd hand them to the governors and things like that. I'll never forget the first time we did it. The governor just wouldn't take it. Just didn't want any poverty. I won't name him. I didn't want to know there was any poverty. He later took them, and they got to be quite notable in the state of Oklahoma, setting the issues and framing the issues and kind of counting how much of our population needed assistance. But it's not a thing that politicians like to hear about their state. So sometimes we had some problems. And then sometimes state agencies and I would get crosswise, and the governors oftentimes had appointed the directors for the agencies. And I was called into the governor's office with an agency head one time, and the governor pulled the curtain and screamed at me. So yes, I've had a few run-ins, but mostly I've survived it. My favorite governor was actually Henry Bellman, which is not even my own political party, but I just adored that man. He was a good person, and really hate his passing. My parents were here at one time visiting, and I took them to a show at the Omniplex that was a photographic exhibit of the homeless. Didn't know Governor Bellman and his wife were going to be there. And he saw me, so I took my parents over to introduce them to him. And my father and he looked like that old cartoon where the two kids are standing there with their thumbs in their jeans going, "You've been farming long?" And Henry Bellman had always put me in mind of my own father, and to see him in the same place. Of course, my mother just stood at attention beside both of them. So I really liked him. And I like the current governor, and I've liked all of them all along. They're all different, but they're pretty cool. We have a very weak governor system. Not this isn't a comment on the governor, but we have a weak governor system in the state of Oklahoma. So, except for the publicity, the pulpit kind of, the governor really doesn't have a lot to say about policy.
So from your standpoint, looking at policy and making change in Oklahoma, who has the power?
People have the power. I think if people get organized and want something, they can probably get it. In my many-year career, it was like there was always somebody that was up and the most powerful at the time. It would change from the House to the Senate. Periodically, the governor would seem to have the public's ear more than anyone else. But it would rotate a lot. But the House and the Senate tend to have more of the structural power. They can get things done. Governor Keating, when he was governor, he very effectively used the veto, and he passed many bills. He would veto bills, and the legislature, as it gained Republican membership, would uphold his vetoes, and he set a lot of policy. with that method. But it was up to the legislature to back him up. Brad Henry is kind of in the same situation with it reversed, with the numbers reversed, and he hasn't done quite as much as Frank Keating did on that same issue. I still do a lot of legislative training. I don't go to the legislature anymore. I stopped that. It'll be 2 years in June. I stopped having a client that took me down to the Capitol to affect policy, but I do a lot of training, and I train people with disabilities and partners in policy making, and older advocates with the Aging Leadership Organization.
Do you miss going down there? And
No, I'm perfectly happy to not anymore. And there'll be a time out there in the future where my training won't be any good anymore because I'm not there.
Mhm.
But right now it's still still relevant. I'll just stop doing it whenever it loses its relevancy.
So, you received your law degree later in life.
Mhm.
What motivated you to go to law school?
All the time, excuse me, all the time that I spent at the Capitol, I actually fell in love with the law. I knew nothing about it when I started. I was interested in policy, and law is policy. And I learned about it, and I learned about statutory law, had no concept of case law or any of that kind of stuff that lawyers mess with. And when I stopped lobbying full-time, when I just decided I'd had enough of that, I wondered what to do, and I thought, well, I like the law, I'll go to law school and learn more about it. And I loved it. I just couldn't wait till I could go to school. It's kind of silly. A lot of people hate it, but I've always been into education, and never expected to practice law. Never have advertised. I've got a huge client load, and a lot of them are people that I've worked with over the years. It's kind of that networking thing that goes on, and I specialize in those kinds of things where the law and social policy seem to overlap. So estate planning and adoptions. I do special needs trusts and things like that. So I started practicing law because people that were friends needed stuff. And it's been nice to be able to help them. So I've done that. And I do both now. I still do social policy, and I do legal work.
And what's your favorite thing about being a lawyer?
Being able to help people. It's very much the same as social work. In fact, I don't think I practiced as much direct social work until I became a lawyer. It was like, now people will come in and sit down and tell me their troubles, and I never had that kind of social work practice of being in the policy arena. People have a lot of needs, and when you're an attorney, people sometimes will listen to you more. People will return your calls, all kinds of things. Being an attorney scares people, quite honestly, and I don't like to scare people, but I do like to be able to help people get what they need. And I'm now 62 years old, and I have a lot of friends that are older and a lot of friends that are sick, and a lot of clients, because I practice estate planning and I deal with a lot of elderly people. A lot of them die, and I go to a lot of funerals, and it's very comforting to me to be able to say, do you need help? And be able to actually do something for somebody when a loved one dies, and being a lawyer and being able to tell them what they need to do or not need to do, whether they harm me or not, that's not even the important thing, but just being able to provide some tangible help to somebody at a time like that, that's my favorite part of
And you've stayed in Oklahoma all these years?
Yes, I have to drive to the ocean periodically to get a fix, but I have stayed here, and I've done that for a lot of reasons. I really like Oklahoma. I like the people. It's a very affordable place to live. I kind of hit the ground running when I got out of school, and I have a lot of contacts. I couldn't, like, for example, I couldn't take my law practice, uproot it, and move it to California because I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't have the contacts, I wouldn't have the clients, I wouldn't be able to afford to be there. So Oklahoma and I fit, and I'm an Oklahoman by choice. So I've stayed here.
And how long have you been in this location, this part of Oklahoma?
I bought 40 acres out here in, I think 1973 or 4. And no, later than that, I'm sorry, 5 or 6. Time flies when you're having fun. And built a home on it, and then built this office in 1998, I think. I have a geodesic dome, and when it got too full to office out of, built this office and started remodeling the dome, trying to get it ready for retirement, ramps, and fixing it up some. I'll show it to you soon.
And what do you, because you're kind of far away from, but not so far away. You know, you're
Mhm.
kind of isolated, but not isolated. Is that how you like it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people have to want to be here. They have to want to come. I mean, I don't get any accidental visitors. I don't get any traffic that isn't trying to get here. I had a death threat once. It's in an adoption case. It was kind of interesting that the guy that threatened me and the judge. and I thought, well, now that's kind of interesting, but I didn't worry about it too much because in order to get here, he would have had to call and ask for directions. So I didn't worry too much.
I mean, it's a great location because GPS, let me tell you, it's not going to pick it
No,
up.
it doesn't get here. No. In fact, people who try to go online and get directions end up someplace way south of McLeod. I'm not actually in McLeod. I'm north of it. I'm even in a different county. I'm actually in Lincoln County. Not even in the same county as McLeod is. The mail goes through there, and that's why it's in my address.
That's outstanding. Well, throughout your career, can you go into detail about some key moments that that you consider some of your biggest career highlights?
I don't know if you could call them moments. They've been more like years or activities or things. One of the things that I like the best is being able to write and shape issues and explain to people how good or bad something is. So I've done a lot of assessments and kind of looking at the scheme of things. I write Kids Count. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's the Annie E. Casey funded child advocacy effort, and it goes through, it goes through the state of Oklahoma. It goes through the Institute for Child Advocacy, and it's a once a year data book on children, and I get to write it, and every state does one, and that's fun. One of the most fun things, but it's been 13 or 15 years, so I don't know if it's a moment. I remember the one that I did right after the bombing in Oklahoma City, and I did the lead essay on the children that were killed in the bombing, and that one page of writing is probably the best I've ever done. That was a highlight within the Kids Count stuff. Sooner Start, special education for infants and toddlers. I was doing some work for the State Health Department, the Commission on Children and Youth, when it became an opportunity to set up special education for infants and toddlers in Oklahoma. That was back in 1990, 89, 90. And because I had done a lot of work already, and we convened a lot of people and got a lot of ideas about how a system like that ought to run, we were third in the nation to, we may have even been first, we don't know, because 3 states were the first to be awarded, and Oklahoma was one of them. So we were kind of on the forefront on that. And I did that and dealt with the funding of it and the policy and implementation of it since 1990 until about a year and a half ago when I kind of retired from that. And that was a highlight. Special education. I mean, if you think about being able to help somebody, looking at providing early intervention services for little tiny kids from birth to age 3, just to get them off to a good start. Therapies, it's a free program, and it's wonderful. That's a highlight.
Well, what about some defeats? Some of those.
I didn't have any till I became a lawyer.
Really?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. When you practice law, you have to learn how to lose, and I don't like that very much. In the policy work, I never really had a defeat because I had time to deal with it. If you don't get something through one year, you come back the next year, you do a different strategy. If you do it thoughtfully, and if you know what you're doing, and if you understand how the system works, you can pretty much get something through. In law, you present your best case in front of a judge, and the judge makes a ruling, or the jury makes a ruling, and you take what you get. And people aren't always right, so sometimes people come and they want something, and you advocate for them, and they're just not on the right side of the way it works. And I also am not sure that the system's always just. In fact, I believed in justice a whole lot more before I became an attorney. And now I see a lot of people losing when they shouldn't, whether I'm representing them or not. Of course, if I'm representing them, they shouldn't. but it doesn't always work out. It's scary. And I would advocate for people staying out of the court system if they can. Do mediation, try to settle, try to work it out.
Why is that?
Because you keep more control over what happens to you. You get to decide what to do, and the fixes stay together longer. If you have a very adversarial relationship with somebody, and you go to court and you fight and you turn over the decision to some judge and they just say this is the way it is, nobody's going to be happy with that, and it'll come unraveled. If you sit down with the other person and you actually work out a solution and you both agree to it and you both commit to it, it's going to last a lot longer. And it's probably going to be less painful. And if there are children involved or other vulnerable populations, are going to be less harmed. So it's a better deal. You have to be careful you don't go to the lowest common denominator and not fix things. So you have to do it well, but it is a better way to live. So I'm an attorney that says don't go to court. So that's probably not real.
Well, when you were notified that you were going to be inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame, and I know it was a long time ago, 96, what was going through your mind at that time?
I didn't believe it. I had never had, I'd never been much of one for awards, although that one seemed pretty cool.
You're in great company.
Oh, I know. And, at the time I was on the faculty of the School of Social Work, and I taught some policy classes, and I used stories and biographies and stuff from the Women's Hall of Fame. I taught people about Clara Looper and Angie DeBow and all of those wonderful people that had been inducted. And when they called me, and well, my friend Claudia Tarrington was running it at the time, and she sent me a letter. She called me and then sent me a letter, and it's got a personal note on it, congratulating me. And I just couldn't believe it. It's like the company was just like way up there, and it was like there were people that I talked about, and I follow around and try to learn stuff from, and I would bend down and kiss their feet. To be even put on the same list as most of the women in that organization is just mind-boggling.
Well, what's great is you have a good mix of people who've done varying things for their community and for their state.
Yes.
And in some cases you have people who feel that they're just ordinary women who just happen to do extraordinary work.
Yes.
So you're in great company. Do you remember who nominated you?
Oh, yes, I do. My sister-in-law, Victoria. And Victoria married my brother and became more like a sister to me than probably she thought she was going to be. And it was really kind of cool. She's a very, very neat person. They live in Southern California now, and I don't get to see him quite as often, but I just adore him. They lived here in Oklahoma City at the time, and she was I think she worked for AP. She was a photographer and a news person, and she knew about the Hall of Fame, and she knew about the work I did, and believed that I deserved to be in it. So she started this process, and she got letters of recommendation from people like Frosty Troy, like Ann Roberts at the Institute, Stratton Taylor, who was president pro tem of the Senate at the time, Tom Kemper, who was head of Commission on Children and Youth, Ann Taylor, who used to be mayor of Nichols Hills, probably somebody else I'm forgetting right now, but they all, they just are wonderful people. And I'd worked fairly closely with them over the years, and they wrote such wonderful things. And of course I was a shoo-in after getting blessings from all of those people. So.
And did you attend the ceremony?
Oh yes. I paid a lot of money for the dress.
Now the ceremonies have changed quite a bit.
Yes, they have.
Can you describe it for me? I mean, we're talking,
Oh, it was at the Gilcrease in Tulsa. And it was extremely formal, and it was a dinner, and they had a master of ceremonies. It was George Nye, and I remember just some of the most important people in the state of Oklahoma were in the audience, and they would call us up there. I gave a speech, and a friend of mine hired a bar, and we all went and partied afterwards, and it was great fun. We stayed over there in a motel suite and had a great time. It was very formal, very classy, and I have had friends get inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame of late, and they don't get treated nearly as nicely as we did back then.
The ceremony has definitely changed.
Yes.
Quite a bit.
The honor is still great.
Absolutely.
And the people are still wonderful people and do great things, but they don't get quite the treatment that we did back then.
Well, how do you feel that, you've touched many lives, you taught for many years, graduate school. How do you feel that now people look at you and they see you as that role model?
I've told people for years, people that know me well, that there's kind of like there's this myth over there, this myth of Sandy Ingram. I don't even sometimes feel like I'm that person. I've had a wonderful time with I've been able to choose the work I do. I'm the beneficiary of the kind of work I do. I mean, I've made good money. I've lived a good life. I've done the kind of work I wanted to. I've received a lot of notoriety, a lot of accolades. I've got an ego wall in my office that's got plaques all over it. It's like people know my name, and I can talk to governors, and I can walk into anybody's office, and it's never bothered me anyway. I call them by their first name. It's a way to kind of equalize things. And I know that there are people that think there is something special about all of that, and it is a role model. What I try to do with that, I'm just a person who, I got some skills, and they're very achievable skills. You can learn how to do the stuff I do, and you can do it, and you can be just as successful. And I try to, that's one of the things that I like about teaching and training, is I try to impart that, because anybody can do this if they just think about it and they care about it. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, if you could give advice to Oklahomans today, what would you tell them?
They need to get back to caring about each other. It's like everybody's gotten mad and hateful and prejudiced and selfish in the past few years. And this state had the nicest people in the world, people that would do anything for anyone, and I don't see that now. And everybody's always blaming somebody, blaming government, blaming the president, blaming the governor, blaming the legislature, blaming their neighbors, blaming somebody that's not like them moving into their community. And it's, people need to get past that. That's not what Oklahomans are about, and it doesn't work well, doesn't set well, and it hurts a lot of people. And I envision a time when we kind of flip that over and we go back to being the kind of Oklahoman that we were when the bombing, for example, when everybody came to help. Everybody gave everything. Poor people in this state give more stuff than they have to other people. Politicians will help somebody, will vote right just because it's right, even if they don't want anybody to know it, because they think that there's this people that wouldn't want them to be nice or be helpful. And I think we just need to get back to all that. That's what I would say. And we will. It'll cycle back.
Everything seems to.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that statement's true. If you don't remember history, you'll be condemned to relive it. I think we can, as we cycle, we can improve things as we go through this process. If we remember, if we have a sense of history.
Well, for women especially, and for men, for those who would like to follow in your footsteps, maybe enter social policy or even law, do you have some advice to share with them?
Do it. There's great needs. You can make great change in the policy arena. If you are a private practitioner, if you have some skills and you are able to reach out as an attorney and represent one person, as a counselor and work with one person, you might do wonderful things for those individuals. If you're in policy, you can do wonderful things for thousands of people in one fell swoop. I mean, you can do so much in the policy arena. You can make such great strides. You can help lots of people at a time. It's a great position to be in. And so I would tell people to do it. And I would tell them to not worry about who's going to pay them to do it, because that's the thing that stops people. oh, I want to be a lobbyist, but who's going to harm me? Well, nobody. Not until you go do some stuff and get a track record. So just go do it, and then point to it. Nobody asked you if you were a volunteer when you did something. I mean, put it on your resume and go. Yeah, so you can do it. Hook up with a group you agree with, the Sierra Club, the Institute for Child Advocacy, anybody that's doing any kind of advocacy, and just go learn how to do it. There's lots of people out there and lots of opportunities.
Well, what does Oklahoma mean to you personally?
Oklahoma is my home, and it's a very comfortable place to be. It's where people generally are kind to each other and will help each other, will help their neighbors, and it's not cold. It's like everybody here accepts the responsibility of living in the state and doing whatever needs to be done. That's what it means to me. I'm comfortable with that.
Well, is there anybody you would like to make mention of that have played an important role in your life?
Oh, there are too many.
I'm sure the list is long, but
the list is long. I don't even think I'll go there because I would inadvertently leave someone out. But I think they know who they are. I have tried to tell people that I care about over the years how much I care about them and what they've done for me. And I think they know. If there's anybody out there that doesn't, they should talk to me because I'll tell them. But I don't want to leave anyone out.
Well, when history is written about you,
it may not.
It may not, but it may. What would you like for it to say?
I cared. And I tried. And I didn't change. I just stuck with it. I kept my ideals. I might change my expectations, but I've never changed my standards or my beliefs.
Well, is there anything else you would like to add that we have not spoken about today?
Can't think of it. You've been pretty inclusive.
Well, we appreciate your time so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.